The rain had been falling since dusk, relentless and cold, a steady percussion against the roof of my rusted Corolla. The wipers swiped back and forth in a rhythm that didn't quite keep up, smearing the water instead of clearing it. I leaned forward, squinting through the windshield, knuckles white on the steering wheel. My shift at St. Mercy's Hospital had ended hours ago, but a late admission kept me there until nearly midnight. 12 hours on my feet, and all I wanted was the silence of my tiny apartment and a hot shower that would probably run cold halfway through. Just 5 more blocks. I whispered to myself, the words fogging the glass. A ritual, something to fill the tired emptiness of the drive home. The heater had quit on me weeks ago, and the air inside the car was icy enough that my breath came out in pale ghosts. Outside, the city lights blurred into streaks of gold and red as the rain danced across the cracked asphalt. Water pooled in potholes that reflected the glow like broken mirrors. My name is Clara Rossi, 26, registered nurse, part-time survivor. Between student loans, rent, and my mother's medical bills, I could barely afford groceries, let alone car repairs. Still, I told myself that exhaustion was better than despair. It meant I was moving, breathing, trying. The traffic lights ahead turned yellow, then red, and I eased onto the brake. The car gave a protesting groan. I rubbed my eyes, willing the world to stop spinning long enough for me to get home. That's when I heard it. A screech of tires slicing through rain. A flash of headlights cutting across my peripheral vision. Then, impact. Metal on concrete. The sound wasn't just noise, it was violence. My head snapped toward it instinctively, heart slamming against my ribs. Across the intersection, a dark SUV had careened out of control, skidding sideways before colliding with the median. The crunch was sickening. For half a heartbeat, everything was silent except for the rain. Then, faint smoke began to curl from beneath the hood. God, I breathed, throwing my car into park. Training kicked in before thought could. I grabbed my phone and the small emergency kit from the glove compartment, flung open the door, and stepped into the storm. The rain hit like icy needles, soaking through my scrubs within seconds. My shoes splashed through ankle, deep puddles as I sprinted toward the wreck. "Hello," I shouted, my voice barely audible over the downpour. "Can you hear me?" The SUV's front end was mangled, the hood folded like paper. Through the shattered windshield, I could make out the driver slumped over the steering wheel. No movement. I tried the driver's door first. It was jammed, twisted by the impact. I ran around to the passenger side. The handle gave with a loud creak, and the door swung open. The interior light flickered weakly, illuminating a man in his 30s, dressed in a black suit now stained dark with blood from a gash along his temple. "Sir," I said quickly, my breath fogging. "I'm a nurse. I'm here to help." His pulse was strong beneath my fingers, steady. Relief flooded through me. Alive. His features were striking even under the harsh light. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, a shadow of stubble along his chin. His dark hair was slick with rain and blood. A silver watch gleamed on his wrist. Luxurious, expensive, definitely not the kind of thing anyone I knew could afford. His hands, though bloodied, were uncalloused, long-fingered. Not a laborer, a businessman maybe. Or something else entirely. "Come on," I murmured, reaching across to unbuckle his seatbelt. "You need to get out of here before." A flicker of movement outside caught my attention. Smoke was thickening near the hood. The faint hiss of leaking fuel reached my ears. "Damn it. Okay," I muttered, looping my arms beneath his shoulders. "We're getting out? Whether you like it or not." He was heavier than he looked, every muscle in my back screaming as I dragged him across the seat. His head lolled against my shoulder, a low groan escaping his lips. "Stay with me," I gasped, half, slipping on the slick asphalt as I pulled him clear of the wreck. "You're going to be fine. Just..." We collapsed together on the wet pavement. I was shaking from cold and adrenaline. His head rested against my lap, his eyes fluttering open for the briefest moment. Dark eyes, too dark. They locked on mine, unfocused but intense, like the storm itself was trapped inside them. "Don't," he rasped, his voice hoarse, accented. "Don't call anyone?" "What?" I blinked, water streaming down my face. "You need a hospital." But his eyes had already rolled back. Unconscious again. My fingers shook as I reached for my phone. 9-1, headlights sliced through the rain from down the street. A second SUV, identical to the wrecked one, came to a smooth stop a few yards away. My pulse spiked. 3 men stepped out, all in suits, all moving with a precision that screamed training. One of them, a tall man with sharp features and an expression carved from granite, barked something in Italian. I didn't catch the words, but the tone froze me in place. He saw me then. Saw the injured man cradled in my lap. Step away from him, he ordered in heavily accented English. No, I said before my brain could stop me. He's hurt. I've called for help. He shook his head once. No ambulance. We take him. I stood my ground. He needs medical attention. Not, whatever this is. The man's hand moved toward his jacket. My stomach turned to ice when I glimpsed the outline beneath the fabric. A gun, please, I said, voice trembling. He could be bleeding internally. He will be taken care of, the man replied evenly. By our doctors. You never saw this. Understand. Before I could respond, another voice, low, rough, unmistakably commanding, cut through the rain. Enough. The injured man was awake again, barely. His eyes found mine first, and for an instant, the chaos faded. There was something in that gaze, awareness, calculation, gratitude. Then he turned his head toward the tall man. See, Tutto Bean, he muttered, the words slurred. She saved you, boss, the tall one said quietly. Dragged you from the car. A boss. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. He turned back to me. Your name, he asked, his voice barely audible but laced with authority even now. I hesitated. Clara. Clara Rossi. A faint smile touched his lips despite the blood on them. Rossi, he repeated as if tasting it. Fate has humor. You need a hospital. I insisted again. Please. He reached up suddenly, his hand closing around mine with surprising strength. No hospital, he said firmly. Just discretion. Can you keep a secret? Miss Rossi? The question made my heart skip. I'm a nurse. Patient confidentiality is part of my job. He studied my face as if searching for something. Then he nodded once, slow, deliberate. Good. The tall man stepped forward. Boss, we must go. Help me up, the injured man ordered. I found myself obeying before I could think. He winced but managed to stand, supported by his men. Rain streamed down his face, mingling with blood, yet his posture remained unbowed. He reached into his soaked jacket and pulled out a small, white card. Plain, embossed with a single number. If you ever need anything, he said, placing it in my palm and curling my fingers around it. Call. Ask for Matteo. I stared at him, trying to process the whirlwind of events. Wet, your car, the police. There will be no car when they arrive, the tall man said flatly. I opened my mouth to ask what that meant, but the injured man, Matteo, met my eyes again, and the words died in my throat. Thank you, Clara Rossi, he said softly. You've saved more than you know. And then he was gone, helped into the waiting SUV, swallowed by the rain and darkness. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there, soaked to the bone, heart hammering, the white card cutting into my palm. Only then did I realize I was shaking. Only then did I notice a black sedan parked across the street, headlights dim, 2 silhouettes inside watching me. By the time I looked back, the wrecked SUV was gone, vanished. No sign of fire, no broken glass, just rain, asphalt, and the sound of my ragged breathing. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, those dark, unflinching eyes, the way he'd said my name like it meant something. By morning, I'd convinced myself it had to be some bizarre dream brought on by exhaustion. Until I saw the white card on my nightstand. Until I smelled expensive cologne lingering faintly on my jacket. And deep down, I knew whatever I'd stumbled into last night wasn't over. CHIR2, TCNV to Ion. The morning after the accident felt unreal. Sunlight filtered weakly through my thin curtains, slicing across the cluttered surface of my nightstand. The chipped coffee mug, a stack of overdue bills, and the small white card that didn't belong to any part of my world. I stared at it for a long time, half expecting it to disappear like something conjured by a fever dream. But it was still there, perfectly real. A single phone number embossed in raised black print. No name, no company. Just a number. Matteo. I traced my thumb over the letters. remembering the weight of his hand, the authority in his voice. No hospital. Just discretion. Who the hell refuses a hospital after a car wreck? Who has men with guns appear out of nowhere? Who makes an entire accident scene vanish overnight? I pushed the cart aside and stood, the floor cold beneath my bare feet. The shower ran lukewarm, but I stayed under it until the water turned icy, trying to wash away the memory of that night. It didn't work. By the time I dressed and poured coffee into my chipped mug, I'd convinced myself I wasn't going to think about it anymore. He was gone. Whatever world he came from, it wasn't mine. I was halfway through my second cup when a knock sounded at my door. I froze. My building wasn't the kind of place that got visitors. Not unannounced ones. The intercom hadn't worked since the last tenant tried to repair it himself and fried the wiring, so the only way to know who was there was the old-fashioned way. "Who is it?" I called, gripping the handle of my mug like a weapon. "Delivery for Miss Rossi," came a man's voice. Calm, polite, professional. I frowned. I hadn't ordered anything. I edged closer to the door and peered through the peephole. A man in a dark suit stood in the hallway, his expression impassive. Beside him was a woman holding a garment bag wrapped in clear plastic. Both looked far too refined to belong in my cracked, paint-peeling building. My stomach dropped. "I didn't order anything," I said, keeping the chain latched. The man smiled faintly. "This is from Mr. Moretti. He wishes to express his gratitude for your assistance last night." "The Mr. Moretti, Matteo." My pulse stuttered. "How do you know where I live, Mr. Moretti has resources," he said smoothly. "He wanted to ensure you received his invitation personally." Invitation. My voice came out higher than I intended. The woman stepped forward slightly, her tone gentle where the man's was formal. "Dinner. Tomorrow evening. He wishes to thank you properly." I shook my head, still behind the half-closed door. "That's not necessary. I was just doing my job." The man's smile didn't falter. "We both know that isn't true, Miss Rossi. You risked your life for him. He insists." He nodded to the woman, who lifted the garment bag slightly. "A gift. For tomorrow. The car will collect you at 7. I'm not going anywhere with." I stopped, realizing how absurd it sounded to argue through a half-open door about dinner with a man I barely knew. A man who might or might not be tied to something dangerous. I don't even know him. Then dinner is the perfect opportunity to change that. The woman's voice held a trace of amusement. "Please, take the dress. If you decide not to attend, keep it anyway. He'll understand." Something about her tone, kind, but with an undertone of finality, told me refusal wasn't really an option. Still, I tried. "I can't accept expensive gifts from strangers." "It's already yours." The man extended a small cream-colored envelope through the gap. "Mr. Moretti also sends this note." I hesitated, then took it, the heavy paper smooth beneath my fingertips. "Enjoy your day, Miss Rossi," the woman said softly. "And remember, this is an invitation, not a command." Their footsteps echoed down the hall, fading until only the hum of the flickering hallway light remained. I shut the door and slid down against it, my heart pounding. My apartment suddenly felt too small, too exposed. The dress hung from my coat hook like something out of another life. Navy silk, simple but expensive. A small box tucked into the bag held a pair of silver earrings that sparkled even in the dull light of my apartment. The envelope bore my name in elegant handwriting. "Clara, some debts can never be repaid, but I would be honored to begin with dinner. Your courage last night was remarkable. I find myself wanting to know the woman behind such bravery. You have nothing to fear from me. Matteo." I read it twice, then a third time. The looping script somehow both formal and intimate. The phrasing was deliberate. "And you have nothing to fear from me." As though he already knew I did. I should have thrown the letter away. Instead, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, holding the dress up against me. It fit the curve of my body perfectly. Even without trying it on, like it had been made for me, a chill ran through me. How would he even know my size? By the time I sat down again, I was shaking. Not from fear, not entirely, but from something harder to define. Curiosity. Unwanted, irrational curiosity. I picked up my phone and stared at the number on the card. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Clara. My name spoken like a secret. I was hoping you'd call. I swallowed hard. How did you find my address? A soft chuckle. You ask direct questions. I like that. Answer it. A pause. Then, with disarming honesty. I have friends at St. Mercy's. It wasn't difficult. You went through hospital records. My voice sharpened. That's invasive. It's efficient, he said without apology. And it was only to thank you. Nothing more. The earrings. The dress. That's not nothing. They're tokens? He said lightly. Not obligations. Still too much, I said. You don't owe me anything. On the contrary, he murmured, voice dropping an octave. I owe you my life. That shouldn't have made my heart skip. But it did. I can't have dinner with someone who sends armed men to my door. He laughed softly, low and rich, the sound curling around me even through the phone. My men are protective, not dangerous. I promise you'll be safe. That's what people say right before something isn't safe. I muttered. You don't trust easily, he said. I've learned not to. Good. Then you'll know I mean it when I say this isn't a game. A pause, then quieter. Have dinner with me, one evening, no expectations, just conversation. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed no. Every rational thought pointed toward running in the opposite direction. But his voice, calm, steady, commanding, held a gravity I couldn't quite resist. And beneath that, something else, sincerity. Gratitude, maybe, or interest. When? I asked before I could stop myself. The car will be waiting tomorrow at 7. He said smoothly. You'll have all the time you need to decide before then. Matteo, I said carefully. If I come, it's only dinner. Of course. He replied, amusement coloring his tone. Just dinner. When he hung up, I sat in the silence of my small apartment, staring at my reflection in the dark window. Just dinner. But somehow, I already knew, nothing about Matteo Moretti would ever be just anything. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. The storm wasn't over, it had only changed form. Hap TR3, T diner. By the next evening, my nerves were a mess of contradictions. Part of me wanted to call and cancel. To say thank you, but no thank you, and go back to my safe, predictable life of 12-hour shifts and lukewarm coffee. The other part of me, the one I didn't want to admit existed, was curious. About him. About the man whose eyes haunted my sleep. I told myself it was just dinner. Nothing more. When 7 o'clock came, I stood by my apartment window, peering through the thin curtain as a sleek black car rolled to a stop outside. Its engine purred low. Restrained power beneath polished metal. The driver stepped out, tall and impassive, wearing a dark suit and gloves despite the mild evening. He glanced up toward my window as though he already knew I was watching. My heart thudded. I slipped on the navy silk dress. It hugged my body with unnerving precision. A perfect fit that made me question how, exactly, Matteo had guessed my measurements. The silver earrings caught the light each time I moved, and the faint scent of jasmine from my cheap perfume was almost comforting against the alien luxury draped over me. The mirror showed someone I barely recognized. Someone who looked like she belonged in another life. I wasn't sure whether that thrilled or terrified me. A knock at the door. When I opened it, the driver inclined his head politely. Miss Rossi. Mr. Moretti is waiting. The car's interior smelled of leather and faint cologne. The same scent I'd caught on my jacket after the accident. A small vase between the seats held a single white rose. Beside it, an envelope with my name in familiar handwriting. For your courage, for your kindness, for tonight. I held it in my lap as the city blurred past outside. The streets grew brighter, richer, the neon of cheap diners giving way to the soft glow of high-end restaurants and designer boutiques. We stopped outside La Fiore, a restaurant I'd only ever heard about in whispers at the hospital. The kind of place that required reservations months in advance, and where one glass of wine probably cost more than my week's groceries. The driver came around to open my door. Mr. Moretti awaits you inside. My pulse hammered as I stepped out. The world around me shifted. From cracked pavement and flickering lights to polished marble and the low hum of wealth. Inside, the hostess greeted me immediately, her professional smile already in place. "Good evening, Miss Rossi," she said. "Mr. Moretti is expecting you." My name sounded strange in her mouth, like it belonged to someone more refined. She led me through the main dining room, all crystal chandeliers and hushed conversation, to a staircase at the back. We climbed to a private floor where soft music played and only one door waited at the end of the hall. "Your table," the hostess said, and opened the door. The room beyond was small but breathtaking. Walls of dark wood floor, to ceiling windows revealing the glittering city skyline. A single table was set for two, candlelight glinting off crystal and silver. And standing by the window, framed by the city lights, was Matteo. Gone were the blood and exhaustion of that rain-soaked night. He wore a charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, no tie. His dark hair was brushed back, a faint scar near his temple the only trace of the accident. When he turned, the air in the room shifted. "Clara," my name spoken softly, but it felt like a command. "You came." I said I would. I managed, though my voice trembled slightly. "You're looking better." He smiled, slow and deliberate. "Thanks to you." He crossed the space between us and took my hand. His touch was warm, steady. He didn't shake it. He lifted it to his lips. The gesture was old-fashioned, yet somehow intimate enough to steal my breath. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you," I replied, trying not to sound flustered, "for the dress and the earrings. Though they're far too much. They suit you," he said. Elegant, understated, with a quiet strength. His gaze lingered on my face a moment longer than polite. "Just like you." The words sent a shiver down my spine. He gestured to the table. "Please, sit." The meal began with champagne, poured by a waiter who appeared and vanished with ghost-like precision. I wasn't used to this kind of attention, the quiet choreography of fine dining. But Matteo moved through it like he'd been born to it. I took the liberty of ordering, he said as I glanced at the menu, more out of habit than necessity. "If there's anything you dislike, it's fine," I interrupted, smiling faintly. "You seem like someone who doesn't do fine." He laughed, a low, warm sound that felt genuine. "You might be right." The first course arrived, delicate, artful, barely enough to count as food but tasting like heaven. Between bites, I finally asked, "So what is it you actually do, Matteo? You never said." "A businessman," he said easily, eyes steady on mine. "Various enterprises. Import-export. Security, real estate. That's a lot of enterprises. I'm a busy man." I leaned back slightly. "Busy doing what, exactly?" A corner of his mouth curved. "Negotiations. Management. Protection." His tone was even, unbothered. But something in the way he said protection sent a ripple of unease through me. "And all of that requires men with guns to follow you around." He chuckled softly, swirling his wine. "You noticed. Hard not to." He set the glass down, his expression shifting. Serious now, but not defensive. "The world I move in isn't always safe. Not everyone appreciates success. Security is a necessity, not a luxury." "Is that what last night was?" I asked quietly. "A business rival, or just an accident?" His gaze flicked away, just for a moment. "A little of both," he admitted. "The road was slick. But some things aren't coincidence." He didn't elaborate, and I didn't push. The weight in his voice told me I didn't want the details. Not yet. When the main course came, conversation turned easier. He asked about my work, my patients, the chaos of hospital life. He listened, truly listened, with the kind of attention I rarely saw in anyone, let alone a man like him. "You save lives," he said quietly when I finished telling him about my most recent shift. "That's a rare kind of strength." "I try," I said, "but it doesn't always feel like enough." His eyes softened. It was enough for me. The honesty in his tone caught me off guard. For a man who hid so much, there was no pretense in that moment. After dessert, espresso and something chocolate I couldn't pronounce, he leaned forward, resting his forms on the table. "I have a favor to ask." I arched a brow. "Already, that didn't take long." "It's nothing improper," he said quickly, amused. "There's a charity gala this weekend. I'm one of the sponsors. The event supports children's hospitals, including St. Mercy's. That made me blink. You donate to the hospital. I do now, he said with a half smile. And I'd like you to attend the gala as my guest. I don't belong at things like that. You belong anywhere you choose to be. His voice was firm, almost commanding. Say yes. I can't. I protested. I have a shift Saturday night. Then you'll have it off. I'll speak with your supervisor. I stared at him. You can't just. Clara, he said gently, but with that same unyielding certainty that always seemed to surround him. Let me thank you properly. Just one evening. My better judgment told me to refuse. To stay far, far away from this man whose world was edged with danger and secrets. But when he reached across the table and his fingers brushed mine, my resolve faltered. His touch was warm, grounding, and impossibly persuasive. All right, I said softly. One evening. The satisfaction in his eyes was immediate, though tempered by something almost tender. I'll send details tomorrow. He insisted on driving me home himself. The car slid through the city like a shadow, quiet except for the hum of the engine and the faint murmur of music. When we reached my building, he came around to open my door, ignoring my protests. I can walk myself up, I said. Humor me, he replied, offering his arm. His tone left no room for argument. We were halfway to the door when a group of young men loitering near the entrance whistled, eyeing the car. One of them took a step closer, smirking. Nice ride, man. That yours? Matteo didn't even glance their way. He pressed a button on his key fob. Somewhere behind us, the car gave a single chirp, and suddenly, another vehicle down the block flicked its headlights once, twice. The boys hesitated. One muttered something under his breath, and they disappeared into the night. You have backup following us, I asked. Protection, he said simply. A necessary precaution. Inside at my door, I fumbled for my keys. Thank you. For dinner. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a small envelope. For the gala. The car will collect you at 7. When I took it, our fingers brushed. He caught my hand gently, turned it over, and pressed his lips to my palm. The gesture was so unexpected, so intimate, that it left me breathless. Until Saturday. Clara Rossi, he said quietly, his eyes holding mine. Dream of something beautiful. When he turned and walked away. I stood in my doorway long after the elevator doors closed behind him, my heart beating far too fast. And though I told myself this was just gratitude, just curiosity, deep down I knew I was already in far too deep. Tier 4. Tichi Gelu. Saturday arrived wrapped in the kind of tension that lived beneath the skin. The kind you couldn't quite name but couldn't shake either. All week, I'd told myself I wouldn't go. That I'd call and cancel. That I'd return the dress and earrings, and wash Matteo Moretti out of my life before he ever became a stain I couldn't scrub away. But I didn't call. I didn't return anything, and when 7 o'clock neared, I stood in front of my mirror again, heart pounding as I slipped into the crimson gown that had arrived that morning. It wasn't the same dress as before. This one was different, deeper, richer. Silk that clung to my body as though it had been tailored just for me. It was modest enough in the front, but the back was another story entirely. A daring, open sweep that left my spine bare, cool air brushing against my skin. A velvet box had accompanied it, and inside lay a diamond pendant. Small, delicate, impossible to ignore. The Notba, Sekioptar 5, Thi Ravidoyan. The night after the gala I barely slept. My mind replayed everything in fragments. The way Matteo's hand had lingered at my back during the dance. The warning glint in Father Lucian's eyes. Alessia's too, sweet smile. The city had looked beautiful from the museum terrace, but beneath that beauty I sensed something darker, like a current hidden beneath calm water. I'd told myself not to get pulled in. I'd promised that after the gala I'd draw a line, but that line had already blurred. When I arrived at Stain Mercy's the next morning, the day began as usual, the smell of disinfectant, the muted buzz of conversation, the endless shuffle of carts and monitors. Yet even in the bright, sterile light of the ward, Matteo's world followed me like a shadow. It wasn't until my lunch break that I saw him again. He was standing in the corridor, impossibly out of place among the nurses and orderlies. A black suit, crisp and perfect, his tie gone, his shirt collar open. He looked like sin made flesh and smiled like he knew it. Matteo, I hissed, hurrying toward him. You can't just show up here? He raised an eyebrow. Your supervisor didn't seem to mind. You spoke to my... Wait, what? She said you'd be on break now. He replied smoothly. I came to ask if you'd join me for a walk. I can't just leave in the middle of a shift. 5 minutes, he said, holding up his hand. No more. Something in his tone made refusal impossible. I glanced at the clock, then exhaled. Fine. 5 minutes. We stepped outside into the weak midday sun. The city was loud, sirens, honking cars, the rush of people. Matteo led me to a quiet corner of the hospital garden, the air smelling faintly of rain and roses. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I owe you an explanation, he said at last. I crossed my arms. You think? He smiled faintly. I told you I'm a businessman. That's true. But it's not the whole truth. I already guessed that. He nodded, eyes narrowing slightly as if weighing each word. My family controls a network of companies across Europe. Shipping, security, construction. But beneath that, there's another layer. One that doesn't appear on paper. I swallowed hard. You mean illegal? Unlawful, perhaps. Immoral, no. His gaze locked on mine. We operate where the law fails to protect. Where power buys justice. We built our empire in those spaces. I took a step back. You're saying you're part of the mafia. He didn't flinch. I'm saying I lead it. The words fell between us like a thunderclap. My breath caught. You're insane. I'm honest. I stared at him, waiting for some sign that this was a joke. There wasn't one. His expression was calm, even gentle. I don't want your world, I said, shaking my head. I don't want any part of it. You already are part of it, he said quietly. You saved me. That night changed things. I just pulled you out of a car, Matteo. That's all. He stepped closer, his voice low. If I had died, there would have been war. My death would have meant chaos. For my family, for this city. You didn't just save me. You kept that from happening. I didn't know any of that. I whispered. You didn't have to. The wind stirred between us, carrying the scent of smoke from a nearby cafe. I felt dizzy, like the ground itself had shifted. So what now? I asked. You think I'll just accept this? That I'll pretend everything's fine? No, he said simply. I think you'll try to run. You're damn right I will. And yet, he murmured, his gaze softening. You won't. Why not? Because you know I'd never hurt you. Because part of you trusts me, even when you shouldn't. The worst part was, he wasn't entirely wrong. I turned away, gripping the railing. This is insane, Matteo. I work in a hospital. I pay my bills late. I eat instant noodles for dinner. You live in a world with bodyguards and enemies and, whatever this is. He came to stand beside me, his presence warm and steady. You think I don't envy your world sometimes? You have freedom, Clara, choices. No one watches your every move. No one expects you to be ruthless just to survive. I looked at him then. Then leave it. If you hate it so much, walk away. He laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. It doesn't work like that. My family would tear itself apart. My father would never allow it. So you stay trapped. I stay necessary, he said. And alive. The silence that followed was heavy. I didn't know what to say to a man who carried his cage so elegantly. Why tell me this? I asked finally. Because you deserve the truth, he said. And because I don't want lies between us. There isn't an us. He smiled, that infuriating, knowing smile. Not yet. Before I could reply, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression hardening. I have to go. Good, I said. Maybe you should stay gone. He looked at me for a long moment. If I could, he murmured, I would. He turned to leave but paused. Clara, be careful leaving work tonight. Just for the next few days. My chest tightened. Why? What's going on? He hesitated. There are people who might think saving me gives them leverage over you. A fear prickled at the base of my neck. Are you saying I'm in danger? I'm saying I'll handle it, he said. But until I do, don't go anywhere alone. Then he was gone, disappearing into the noise of the street as easily as he'd appeared. I stood there for a long time, the garden suddenly colder, the air heavier. My reflection in the glass door looked like a stranger. Someone standing at the edge of two worlds, unsure which would swallow her first. And though I told myself I hated him for dragging me into this, the truth was harder to admit. Part of me already knew I'd never be able to stay away. THDR6. THEIC. The next few days passed like walking across glass. Careful, quiet, every step deliberate. At the hospital, I smiled when expected, charted vitals, gave medication, and pretended not to glance over my shoulder every few minutes. Matteo's warning replayed in my head. Don't go anywhere alone. I told myself he was being paranoid, that his world didn't have anything to do with mine. But when I left work late on Tuesday and found a black car idling across the street from my apartment, engine running but no one visible inside, denial became harder to hold on to. The first night I ignored it. The second, I called the police. They arrived half an hour later, lights flashing. The car was gone by then, and the officers exchanged looks that said, "We have real emergencies to handle, lady." They left me with a polite warning and an even heavier dread. By the third night, I slept with the lamp on. I hadn't seen Matteo since that day at the hospital, but his presence lingered everywhere. In the card still tucked into my wallet. In the perfume he'd noticed during dinner. In the way my pulse quickened whenever my phone buzzed. It wasn't until Thursday afternoon that he called. Clara. His voice, low and warm, cut through the static of my nerves like silk. "You sound tired. I wonder why," I said flatly. "Maybe because someone keeps watching my building." A pause. Described the car. Black. Tinted windows. Same spot every night. He cursed softly in Italian. "You should have told me sooner." I called the police. "That won't help," he said sharply. "You need protection. I don't need a bodyguard." "Yes," he said, calm again but firm. "You do? Until this is over?" "Over?" I echoed. "What exactly is this?" There was a rustle of papers, a sound like him pacing. "A rival family is testing boundaries. They think threatening you might draw me out. It won't, but I won't let them touch you." The words hit me like a blow. "You told me your world wouldn't reach mine. I told you I'd do everything I could to keep it separate. I'm still trying. Trying isn't working." "I know," he said quietly. "Which is why I'm sending someone." I exhaled sharply. "No, Matteo. Listen to me. I don't want men with guns standing outside my door." He didn't argue. "Then you'll come to me." I blinked. "What?" "Pack a bag. A few essentials. I'll send a car in an hour." "You can't be serious." "Do you trust me?" he asked. The question was too familiar, too heavy. "I don't know." "Then trust that I'd never risk your life," he said, his tone soft but absolute. "Not for anything." The call ended before I could protest. I stood in my tiny living room for a long time, the phone heavy in my hand. Leaving meant stepping fully into his world, the one he'd promised to keep me out of. But staying meant waiting for shadows to move. In the end, fear made the decision for me. An hour later, headlights flashed outside. A different car this time, sleek, dark gray, unmarked. The driver, a middle-aged man with a calm expression, didn't speak as he took my suitcase and held the door open. We drove in silence through the city, the streets thinning as we moved away from the noise and toward the hills. The skyline fell behind us, replaced by winding roads lined with trees. Eventually, the car turned through wrought iron gates and up a long driveway. The house that appeared looked less like a home and more like a fortress. 3 stories of pale stone, ivy climbing the walls. The faint gleam of security cameras at every corner. Lights glowed from the windows, warm and golden against the dusk. Matteo was waiting at the entrance. He'd traded his usual suit for a black sweater and slacks, but he still carried himself like a man who commanded the air around him. When he saw me step out of the car, the tension in his shoulders eased. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I didn't exactly have a choice." He gave a faint smile. "You did. You always do." Inside, the house was quiet, too quiet. The air smelled faintly of leather and cedar. A few framed photographs lined the hallway, Matteo with his father, Alessia beside them, both smiling with the politeness of people who'd learned to do so in public. I'll show you your room, he said, leading me upstairs. I stopped. You mean I'm not staying with you? His eyes flicked toward me, amused. I said protection. Not imprisonment. He opened the door to a guest suite that looked bigger than my entire apartment. A 4-poster bed, soft lamps, curtains that shimmered like champagne. I don't belong here, I said quietly. You belong wherever you're safe, he replied. As he turned to leave, I asked, is this normal for you? Hiding people you care about? He hesitated, hand on the doorknob. No, he said. You're the first. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound, every whisper of wind against the glass, made my heart race. I got up and wandered toward the balcony, the cool night air clearing my head. Below, 2 men stood near the gates, their figures silhouetted against the faint lights. Guards, real ones. The door behind me creaked softly. Can't sleep. Matteo stood there, barefoot, holding 2 glasses and a bottle of wine. He nodded toward the balcony. May I? I shrugged. It's your house. He poured the wine, handing me a glass. For a while, we stood in silence, the city lights visible in the distance like a field of stars. Do you ever regret it? I asked suddenly. Regret what? Being who you are. He took a long sip before answering. Sometimes. But regret doesn't change blood. That's a convenient excuse. He smiled faintly. You think I don't know that? My father taught me that strength means never showing weakness. But I've learned that sometimes, strength means letting someone see the cracks. He turned toward me, eyes dark and unreadable. You're dangerous, you know. I blinked. May. You make me question things I shouldn't. For a moment, the air between us shifted, heavy, charged. His hand brushed mine, a fleeting touch that left my skin burning. Don't, I whispered. He tilted his head. Don't what? Don't make this harder than it already is. He exhaled slowly. I'm not trying to. But the truth is, Clara, you're already part of this. Whether you want to be or not. What does that even mean? It means they'll use you to get to me. Which means I can't let you go. Not yet. Sounds less like protection, I said bitterly, and more like captivity. He flinched. If that's what you believe, you're free to leave. Right now. I looked at him, at the raw sincerity beneath the steel, and knew he meant it. But leaving didn't feel like safety anymore. Not when there were men outside watching, not when his enemies already knew my name. Instead, I nodded. I'll stay. For now. He relaxed, though the line of his jaw stayed tight. Good. We stood together in silence, the night stretching between us. Somewhere below, a dog barked once, then quieted. Matteo turned to go but paused in the doorway. Clara, he said softly. You have no idea how much I wish you'd never found that car. When he was gone, I sank into the chair by the window, staring at the world beyond the glass. I'd thought the choice was about him. About whether I could forgive his lies, his world, his danger. But the truth was simpler, and far more terrifying. The choice wasn't about whether to stay or leave. It was about who I was becoming when I chose to stay. THR7, Kesiki NCIS. The next morning dawned gray and heavy, the kind of light that made everything seem uncertain. I woke to the muted murmur of voices downstairs. The rhythmic exchange of Italian, low and tense. I dressed quickly and followed the sound. The house felt different in daylight. It wasn't just grand, it was guarded. Every window revealed another man stationed somewhere. Along the drive, by the gates, at the corners of the property. The air hummed with quiet vigilance. In the main hall, Matteo stood at the center of it all, phone pressed to his ear, expression carved from stone. He looked up as I entered, the sharp lines of his face softening slightly. Morning, I said cautiously. Your staff seems busy. He ended his call. There was an incident last night. My stomach tightened. What kind of incident? One of my warehouses was hit, he said evenly. It's nothing for you to worry about. That's not reassuring. He set the phone down and crossed to me, his gaze searching my face. Are you all right? Did you sleep? Some, I said. Which is more than I expected. He smiled faintly. Good. Then let's keep it that way. The calm tone didn't fool me. His eyes were darker than usual. Wary, watchful. I'd seen that same look on ER doctors right before a trauma patient crashed. Who attacked you? I asked. He hesitated. A family from Naples. They've been pushing at our territory for months. The accident you pulled me from wasn't random. It was a message. The words sank in slowly. So they tried to kill you? He nodded once. And now they're trying again. Hitting the warehouse was retaliation for last week's deal. And you think they'll come here? I asked quietly. They won't get that far, he said. But I won't risk you. I looked toward the window. One of the guards outside scanned the perimeter with mechanical precision. This isn't living, Matteo. It's waiting for something to explode. That's the price of control. Or obsession. I muttered. He smiled without humor. Maybe both. Before I could respond, Alessia swept into the room, her heels clicking like gunshots against the marble. She wore all black. Her hair pulled into a severe twist. So, she said coolly, this is the woman our brother has decided to endanger. Alessia, Matteo warned. No, she deserves honesty, Alessia said, turning to me. You think this house is safe? That his guards will protect you. They won't. The moment his enemies realize how much you matter, you become a target. Enough, Matteo said, his voice sharp. But Alessia didn't flinch. You should have stayed away, nurse. He brings ruin to everyone close to him. Even the ones he loves. Even the words hit like a slap. Before I could reply, she turned and stalked out. I stood in silence for a moment, the echo of her heels fading down the hall. She's wrong, Matteo said quietly. I asked. Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like she's right. He reached for me, then stopped himself. I told you, I'll handle this. I don't want to be something you've handled, I said, stepping back. I want to understand. He looked at me then, something raw flickering in his eyes. You think I wanted this life? I was born into it. My father raised me to take what was his, to protect it with blood if necessary. But I didn't ask for you, Clara. You just appeared, like a miracle I didn't deserve. The words silenced me. Before I could speak, the front door burst open. One of the guards stumbled inside, blood streaking his temple. Boss, he gasped. They found us, 2 cars, armed. Coming up the East Drive, everything happened at once. Matteo barked orders in Italian, his men scattering. He turned to me, eyes hard. Go upstairs, he said. No. Clara. His tone cracked like thunder. I ran. The world narrowed to sound boots on marble, shouted commands. The thud of my heartbeat. I reached the 2nd floor and ducked into the room he'd given me, pressing my back against the wall. Through the window, I saw movement, figures darting between trees, flashes of metal. Gunfire shattered the air. I dropped to the floor, hands over my head. The sound was deafening, sharp cracks tearing through the stillness of morning. Somewhere below, Matteo shouted something. I couldn't make out the words. Seconds stretched into eternities. Then, silence. I didn't move until the door opened. Matteo stood there, chest heaving, blood on his sleeve, not his, I hoped. Behind him, 2 men dragged someone past the hall, limp and unconscious. It's over, he said, voice rough. You're safe, I stared at him. What? What just happened? They won't try again, he said simply. That's not an answer. He looked exhausted, older somehow. An answer won't change what you saw. Matteo, I whispered. Someone almost died here. Many have, he said. That's the truth of what I am. He sat on the edge of the bed, running a hand through his hair. For the first time, he looked human, tired, haunted. I tried to keep you away from this, he said quietly. But the moment they knew your name, there was no going back. I sat beside him. The silence between us was heavy, but I couldn't ignore the tremor in his hands. You killed them. I protected you, he said. That's not the same thing. He turned to me, his expression unguarded, almost pleading. If I hadn't, they would have killed you. Do you understand that? I do, I said softly. But I also understand that every time you pull that trigger, you lose a piece of yourself. He looked at me, something breaking in his eyes. Then what am I supposed to do, Clara? I didn't have an answer. Outside, the guards were already cleaning up the chaos. the quiet efficiency of men used to violence. From the balcony, I could see the black cars being towed away, the blood already fading into the gravel. When I turned back, Matteo was standing by the window, shoulders squared, staring out into the distance. "This is my world," he said. "You asked for honesty. Here it is." "And what about my world?" I asked. "My job, my patience, my life. Do they just disappear because yours is louder?" He didn't look at me. "I'll make sure you can go back soon." "Back to what?" I asked. "Nothing will ever be normal again." He faced me then, his eyes raw with something like regret. "You're right. It won't." He stepped closer, his hand hovering near mine but not quite touching. "But you're alive. And as long as you're alive, I can live with whatever I've done." I wanted to tell him that wasn't enough, that survival wasn't the same as peace. But when I looked into his eyes, all I saw was the truth, the impossible mixture of violence and tenderness that defined him. Outside, the last of the gunfire's echo faded into the hills. Inside, something far more dangerous took its place. CTR-8, Teach Bargain. The day after the attack, the house felt like a held breath. Every sound carried weight: footsteps on marble, the crackle of radios, the muted click of doors locking. Even the sunlight that spilled through the tall windows seemed thinner, wary. I moved through the halls like a ghost, trying not to disturb the uneasy calm. Matteo had disappeared early that morning. No one said where he'd gone, but the sharpness in the guards' voices told me enough. Something was happening, something I wasn't supposed to see. By mid-afternoon, the silence became unbearable. I wandered down to the library, a vast room lined with shelves that stretched to the ceiling. The air smelled of paper and dust and faint cologne. His cologne. I found myself tracing my fingers along the spines of books I couldn't pronounce. Anything to keep my mind from replaying the gunfire. Looking for something to read. I spun around. Alessia stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Her usual cool elegance was still intact, but today there was a crack in it, a wariness she couldn't quite hide. "I was just trying not to think," I said. She gave a short, humorless laugh. "That's impossible in this house." "Has it always been like this?" I asked. "The guards, the violence, the fear." She walked past me, running her fingers along the shelf. "Always. Our father built an empire from blood. Matteo inherited it. He didn't choose it, no," she agreed. "But he chose not to leave it." She turned to me, eyes sharp. "And now you're here, and he's making choices I've never seen him make before." "What do you mean?" She hesitated, as if weighing how much to say. "He called a meeting with the heads of the rival families. Tonight. He intends to negotiate a truce." I blinked. "A truce? After what happened yesterday?" "Exactly," she said. "He'll offer them something valuable in exchange for peace. Something, or someone, they can't refuse." A chill crept up my spine. "What are you saying?" What Alessia's gaze held mine. "I'm saying that Matteo is reckless when he cares about something. Or someone. And you, Clara Rossi, have become leverage." Before I could respond, a voice came from the doorway. "That's enough, Alessia." Matteo stood there, his tone soft but final. He looked exhausted, dark circles beneath his eyes, jaw tight from sleeplessness. Alessia gave him a long, unreadable look, then swept past him without another word. He waited until she was gone before speaking. "Don't listen to her. Is she wrong?" I asked. "You're planning to meet with the people who tried to kill you." "Less," he said simply. "Why?" "Because if I don't, they'll keep coming. And next time, it won't stop at the gates." He crossed to the window, staring out over the courtyard where men patrolled in silence. "The Moretti family stands on the edge of war. 100 people could die over a misunderstanding. I won't let that happen. So what's the plan? You just make peace with murderers. If it keeps you safe, yes. Matteo?" He turned sharply. "You think I like this? I hate it. But my family, this city, they depend on balance. If I can't hold that balance, everything falls." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "They want me to hand over territory, money, trade routes. I'll give them something else instead." "What else?" "You," he said quietly. The room seemed to tilt. "Me. Not as payment, he said quickly, as protection. You'll stay somewhere they can't touch you. A safe house outside the city. Alessia will take you there tonight. No, I said, shaking my head. You can't send me away like I'm baggage to hide. It's not forever. You said that before. This time I mean it. I stared at him, searching his face for a crack, a lie. You're meeting them alone, aren't you? Yes. That's suicide. That's necessary, Matteo. You can't. I can, he said, his voice hard. Then softer, because it's my choice. And this, all of this, began the night you saved me. That wasn't your fault, I said. I didn't know who you were. And yet here you are. The silence between us thickened, filled with things neither of us could say. I took a step forward. Then let me come with you. He blinked. What? I won't be safer locked away somewhere. If this is about leverage, they already know who I am. You can't hide me forever. He shook his head. You don't understand how dangerous they are. I understand enough. And I'm done running from your world when it keeps finding me anyway. He hesitated, torn between reason and instinct. Finally, he exhaled. If you come, you do exactly as I say. No questions, no arguments. I can do that. I doubt it, he said with a faint, weary smile. That night, the meeting took place in an abandoned glass factory on the edge of the river. Neutral ground, Matteo called it. We arrived just after sunset, escorted by 2 black SUVs. The city lights shimmered across the water, distorted by the wind. Inside, the air was thick with dust and tension. Men stood in quiet formation along the walls, hands folded but ready. Matteo walked ahead, every inch the calm, dangerous figure I'd first met through shattered glass and rain. 3 men waited at the far end of the warehouse, seated behind a metal table. The one in the middle rose as we approached. He was tall, elegant, with silver hair and the kind of cold smile that came from years of practice. Segner Moretti, he said smoothly. I was told you'd come alone. I never travel alone, Matteo said. You know that. The man's gaze flicked to me, curious. And who is this? Someone who has nothing to do with our business. Matteo said, his tone even but edged with warning. The man smiled faintly. The nurse. The one who pulled you from the wreckage. A romantic story. I almost regret being the cause of it. Every muscle in Matteo's body went still. You shield. The man laughed quietly. You're here to bargain, not threaten. So, let's bargain. Matteo pulled a small black folder from his coat and set it on the table. These are revised terms. You get control of the eastern docks and the new import contracts. In return, you stop your expansion north of the river. And if I refuse? Matteo's voice dropped. Then I stopped asking. For a long moment, no one spoke. The air between them crackled, heavy with unspoken violence. Then the man opened the folder, scanned it, and smiled. You surprise me, Moretti. I expected arrogance. You offer compromise. I offer survival, Matteo said. For both of us. The man nodded slowly. Very well. You'll have your peace. But something in his tone made my skin crawl. It was too easy, too smooth. Matteo, I whispered. Something's wrong. And then I saw it, the glint of movement in the shadows above. A flash of metal. A sniper. Down, Matteo shouted, pulling me to the floor as a bullet shattered the glass above us. Chaos erupted. Men dove for cover, gunfire echoing through the cavernous space. Matteo rolled, shielding me with his body as another shot rang out. His men fired back, the sound deafening, brutal. Go, he yelled, grabbing my wrist. Get to the car. I hesitated, but his expression, fierce, desperate, left no room for argument. I ran. Outside, the night was alive with shouting. One of Matteo's guards shoved open a door, ushering me toward the SUV. I climbed inside, heart hammering, the air thick with smoke and fear. Then I heard it. Another shot. Closer this time, and silence. The driver slammed the accelerator, tires screeching against concrete. The city lights blurred past as we sped away, my breath coming in short, ragged bursts. Where's Matteo? I demanded. Where is he? The guard in the passenger seat didn't look back. He'll find us. But his voice was grim, and his hands shook as he reloaded his gun. I pressed my forehead against the cold window, staring at the dark river as it fell away behind us. Somewhere out there, Matteo was fighting for his life again, and this time, I had no idea if he'd survive it. CR9. Betrayal. The drive back to the Moretti estate was a blur, streetlights smeared into golden streaks, the city dissolving into darkness behind us. I kept my eyes fixed on the road ahead, waiting for Matteo's car headlights to appear. They never did. When we reached the gates, the house was alive with movement. Guards hurried across the courtyard, voices sharp and urgent. Alessia was already waiting on the steps, her face pale but composed. "Where is he?" she demanded before I could speak. "Where's my brother?" "He stayed behind," I said, my voice breaking despite my effort to sound calm. "There was an ambush. He told me to run." Her expression hardened, grief and anger colliding in her eyes. "Dio mio," she whispered. "I told him this was suicide." Then she turned to one of the guards. "Get every man we have on that site. Now." He nodded and vanished into the night. I caught her arm. "He's still alive, Alessia. I know he is." Her gaze met mine, sharp as glass. "Hope is a luxury we don't afford in this family, Miss Rossi." I wanted to scream at her, but before I could, Matteo's head of security, a man called Vitor, approached. His expression was grim, his black coat damp with rain. "We've lost contact with Matteo's team," he said. "But there's movement near the river. Someone's coming." My heart stopped. Him, maybe. Minutes later, the gates swung open and a car rolled up the drive, the same one Matteo had taken to the meeting. Its headlights cut through the fog, but the sight that emerged made my blood run cold. The windshield was shattered, bullet holes dotting the sides. One of the guards opened the rear door, and Matteo stumbled out, blood smeared along his jaw, one arm pressed tightly against his ribs. "Matteo!" I ran to him, catching his weight as he faltered. "You're hurt." "I'm fine," he rasped, even as his knees buckled. Vitor and another man lifted him between them, helping him inside. I followed, ignoring Alessia's warning look. We half carried him into the study, where the lights glowed warm against the cold night. Matteo sank onto the leather couch, breathing hard. His shirt was soaked through with blood. "I need a med kit," I said, already moving. "No." Vitor grabbed one from a nearby cabinet and handed it over. My hands were steady even as my mind screamed. Training kicked in pressure, gauze, antiseptic. The wound was deep but clean, a gunshot that had grazed his side. "You're lucky," I muttered, cleaning it. "Half an inch lower and—" "Don't say it," he murmured. "You'll make me feel mortal." I met his eyes. "You are mortal." He smiled faintly. "Not tonight, apparently." When I finished bandaging him, he caught my wrist. His fingers trembled slightly, a rare betrayal of weakness. "You shouldn't have come," he said. "You shouldn't be here. I told you I'm done running." His grip tightened. "You don't understand. Someone set us up." I froze. "What?" "The meeting," he said. "They knew where we'd be, when we'd arrive, even that I wasn't bringing a full team. That information came from inside." I stared at him. "You mean one of your men betrayed you?" He nodded, grim. "Someone close." Before I could ask who, Alessia reappeared, her expression unreadable. "They'll come through communications," she said. "We'll find the leak." Matteo looked at her for a long moment. "Make sure you do." As she hesitated, then added quietly, "Father's not going to like this." "I don't care what father likes," he snapped. "This ends with me." Something unspoken passed between them, a current of power and resentment. When she left, I turned back to him. "You think she's right? That your father's involved?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small folded document, stained with blood. "They were supposed to sign this," he said. "A truce agreement." But before the bullets, one of them said something strange. "What did he say?" "He said, 'You should have stayed loyal to your own blood.'" I frowned. "Meaning?" Matteo leaned back, closing his eyes. "Meaning this wasn't just an outside hit." The realization settled like ice in my stomach. "Someone in your family, maybe not directly," he said, "but someone wants control. And if I'm dead, they get it." The thought chilled me. "And you think Alessia?" He opened his eyes. I think I've trusted the wrong people before. We fell silent. The fire crackled faintly in the hearth. I could see the pain in his face, though he tried to hide it. His world was collapsing from the inside, and he knew it. What happens now? I asked. I make a deal, he said softly. The kind no one can break. With who? He looked at me then, eyes dark and full of something that wasn't just fear. With you. Me, I laughed. Incredulous. Matteo, I'm not part of your world. You are now, he said, his voice steady. They won't come after someone tied to me by name. Not if you're under my protection. I frowned. What are you saying? Marry me, he said simply. The room went silent. I thought I'd misheard him. You what? He sat forward, wincing slightly. If they believe you're mine, no one touches you. No one dares. It's the only way to keep you safe. That's not marriage, that's strategy. It's survival, he said. And it buys us time to find the traitor. I shook my head. You can't just decide that. He smiled faintly. It's not a decision. It's a bargain. Do you even hear yourself? This is insane. Maybe, he admitted. But it will work. I turned away, my heart pounding. You're asking me to fake a marriage with a mafia boss to keep myself alive. I'm asking you to trust me again. I closed my eyes. The word trust sounded different now, heavier, sharper. Trust had gotten me here into this gilded prison of loyalty and lies. And yet, when I looked at him, pale from blood loss, eyes full of fire, I realized something I didn't want to admit. I still cared. What happens after? I asked quietly. When the danger's gone. He didn't hesitate. Then you walk away. Free. Just like that. If that's what you want. I studied him for a long moment, searching for deceit and finding only exhaustion and conviction. Finally, I said, all right, I'll do it. You for the first time that night, he exhaled. A sound of relief, fragile and real. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, I said softly. If this goes wrong, it'll destroy us both. He smiled faintly. Then let's make sure it doesn't. As I turned to leave the study, I caught sight of Alessia in the hallway, half hidden by shadow. Her expression was calm, but her eyes, cold, calculating, told me she'd heard every word. And for the first time, I wondered if Matteo had just bargained with the wrong enemy. Sijiptr 10, Teach's 2 arm. The wedding took place 2 days later, in a chapel that looked carved from another century. No music, no guests. No flowers. Just the scent of candle wax and the low murmur of rain outside. It felt less like a ceremony, and more like a truce sealed in quiet desperation. Matteo stood beside me at the altar, his arm in a sling, his gaze steady. The priest, Father Lucian, spoke in low, measured tones, his eyes flicking between us with something like sorrow. Do you, Matteo Moretti, take Clara Rossi to be your lawful wife? I do, Matteo said without hesitation, his voice firm. When it was my turn, the words caught in my throat. I could have said no. I should have said no. But as I looked at him, the man who'd risked his life to keep me breathing, the world beyond that chapel vanished. I do, I whispered. The words were quiet, but they changed everything. Father Lucian closed the book and made the sign of the cross. Then before God and man, you are bound. His eyes lingered on me as he added, softly, may he grant you both peace, though I fear neither of you will find it here. The ride back to the estate was silent. Matteo's hand rested over mine, firm and warm. He said nothing, but his thumb traced slow circles across my skin, a quiet reassurance, or maybe a silent apology. When we arrived, the guards greeted us with a mixture of respect and disbelief. Word spread quickly through the house. By nightfall, every whisper carried my name, a Signora Moretti. Alessia didn't come to dinner. The dining hall felt enormous, echoing. Matteo sat at the head of the long table. I at his right. Between us stood a bottle of red wine, untouched. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes that no amount of candlelight could soften. You hate this, he said suddenly. I blinked. What? This life, this house, me. I don't hate you, I said. I just don't know what I've become since meeting you. He considered that for a moment. Stronger, he said, and braver than anyone I know. That's not the same as safe. No, he admitted. But safety is an illusion. A clap of thunder rolled outside, shaking the windows. The rain began again, relentless. The same sound that had started everything between us. What happens now? I asked. We pretend to be husband and wife until your enemies give up. He met my eyes. We don't pretend. The words lingered between us like heat. Before I could respond, Vitor entered, his face grave. Boss, he said. We found the leak. Matteo straightened. Who? Vitor hesitated. It was one of ours. One of your father's men. He fed information to the rival family through a shell account in Switzerland. Matteo's expression darkened. Does father know? He will soon, Vitor said carefully. But there's more. The orders to kill you didn't come from Naples. Matteo stilled. Then from where? Vitor's eyes flicked toward me, then back. From inside this house. My heart clenched. No. Matteo's jaw tightened. Say it. Vitor lowered his gaze. Alessia. The silence that followed was suffocating. That's impossible, Matteo said finally. But there was doubt in his voice. She would never. She signed the authorizations, Vitor said. We traced the codes. She wanted to take control of the family before your father named you successor. Matteo stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the marble. Where is she? She left the property an hour ago, Vitor said. No one's seen her since. Thunder cracked again outside, closer this time. Matteo's hands curled into fists. Get the cars ready. I caught his arm. Matteo, stop. You're bleeding again. You can't chase her like this. He turned to me. Eyes burning. She betrayed me. She put you in that warehouse, Clara. The words hit like a knife. What? She knew you'd be there, he said. She leaked your name weeks ago. That's how they found you after the accident. The room seemed to tilt. She wanted them to kill you. He nodded grimly. And if I had died, she'd have inherited everything. I shook my head, then let the police handle it. He almost laughed. The police? You think they care who kills whom in my world? This isn't justice, Clara. This is blood. I gripped his hand. And if you kill her, you become exactly what she wanted. Another monster. He froze, staring at me. For a heartbeat, I thought I'd reached him. Then he pulled away. I'm already a monster, he said softly. The only difference is which one of us survives. He turned and strode out, Vitor following close behind. Cooled hours passed. The storm raged, wind howling through the trees. I waited in the sitting room, every flash of lightning painting the walls in white and shadow. The clock ticked endlessly, each second heavier than the last. When the door finally burst open, Matteo was soaked through, rain streaming down his face. Blood, not his, stained his sleeve. He looked like something carved from the storm itself. It's done, he said. I stood slowly. Shiz. He nodded once. The air between us fractured. He crossed the room, bracing his hands against the wall, as if it were the only thing holding him upright. I went to him despite myself. She was your sister, I whispered. She stopped being that the moment she aimed at you. I touched his arm gently. You didn't have to do this. He turned, his face pale, eyes hollow. If I hadn't, she would have come for you again. For both of us. And for the first time, Matteo looked small, not in stature, but in spirit. The weight of what he'd done hung around him like chains. You can hate me, he said, his voice breaking. Just don't leave. Not tonight. Something inside me cracked. I should have left. I should have run the moment I saw the blood. Instead, I reached for him. He caught me like a drowning man catching air. His hands were cold, trembling, but when his lips met mine, the world outside, the rain, the thunder, the ruin, disappeared. There was nothing gentle about it. It was desperate, raw, born of grief and survival, and the terrible bond between two broken souls. When he pulled away, his forehead rested against mine. I don't deserve you, he whispered. I'm not sure either of us deserves anything, I said. But I'm here. Outside, lightning split the sky. The storm raged on, furious and unrelenting, a mirror of the chaos inside the house, inside us. And though neither of us said it aloud, we both knew the truth. Peace was a lie. The real storm had only just begun. CTR 11. Tichi Feladu dawn crept in pale and uncertain, like the world wasn't sure it wanted to begin again. The storm had passed, but the air still smelled of rain and something heavier. Smoke, maybe, or the residue of violence that clung to the Moretti estate like a curse. Matteo hadn't slept. I found him in the study, sitting behind his father's old desk, a glass of untouched whiskey beside his hand. The curtains were half drawn, light spilling across the chaos, torn papers, a broken vase, the remnants of a night that had rewritten everything. I hesitated in the doorway. You should rest. He didn't look up. I can't. I stepped closer, my voice soft. Vitor said it's over. The rival family's in retreat. The threat's gone. The threat never goes, Matteo said quietly. It just changes shape. He finally lifted his gaze to me, and the sight hollowed me out. He looked older. Not from years, but from everything he'd carried. Alesha's betrayal had left a mark deeper than any wound. You don't have to do this alone, I said. He gave a bitter smile. I've always done it alone. Not anymore. For a moment. Something flickered in his eyes, gratitude maybe. But then he turned away, voice hard again. There are still people loyal to her. They'll want revenge. I crossed my arms. Then we find them. He shook his head. We don't do anything. You're leaving today. The words hit like a slap. Leaving. After everything. You've done enough, he said. I've dragged you too far into this. I took a step forward. You think sending me away fixes what's happened? It doesn't. It just leaves you alone with it. That's the point, he said sharply. Don't do that, I said. Don't pretend this is noble. You're punishing yourself. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping back. You think this is punishment? I killed my sister, Clara. I destroyed the last piece of family I had left. There's nothing left to save. You're wrong, I said. There's still you. He laughed, low and broken. You don't know what that means. Before I could answer, the door burst open. Vitor entered, his face pale. Bus, we have a problem. Matteo straightened instantly. What is it? Your father's back. The room went cold. Matteo's father, a Giovanni Moretti, hadn't been seen since before the war began. He'd built the empire Matteo now ruled, and rumors said he'd gone in hiding to avoid prosecution. I'd heard Matteo speak of him only once, with a mix of fear and loathing. Where? Matteo asked. The old vineyard, Vitor said. He's demanding to see you. Says he wants answers. Matteo's jaw clenched. Get the car ready. Matteo, I said quickly. You're in no condition. This isn't optional, he said. He won't stop until I face him. Vitor hesitated, then left. I caught Matteo's hand before he could follow. Please. Whatever happens, don't go there angry. He gave a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. Anger's the only thing he ever taught me. Deck. The vineyard sat on the edge of the countryside. Acres of dead vines twisting up from the earth like skeletons. The main house loomed ahead, old and decaying, its windows dark. The rain had left the gravel slick beneath our feet as we stepped out of the car. Giovanni Moretti was waiting in the courtyard. Even age hadn't dulled his presence. His hair was white now, but his posture straight, his eyes cold as winter steel. My son, he said, spreading his arms. You've made quite the mess. Matteo stopped a few feet away. I cleaned up yours. Giovanni's smile didn't waver. Be killing your sister? How poetic. She betrayed me. She did what I would have done. Giovanni said calmly. She saw weakness and tried to correct it. Matteo's voice was low, dangerous. You call loyalty weakness. I call sentiment weakness, Giovanni said. And you've drowned in it. You married the girl who saved you. What were you thinking? His gaze slid to me, sharp and dismissive. She doesn't belong here. Don't, Matteo warned. Giovanni raised an eyebrow. Don't what? Speak the truth. She's my wife. Giovanni's expression hardened. No, she's your liability. Something inside Matteo broke then. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, grabbing his father's collar. You built this empire on blood and fear, he hissed. But I'm done living by your rules. Giovanni didn't flinch. And what will you replace them with? Love, mercy, those are luxuries. Matteo, ones our name can't afford. Matteo shoved him back, breathing hard. Then maybe the Moretti name dies with me. Giovanni's eyes narrowed. You wouldn't dare. Matteo stepped closer again, voice like ice. Watch me. The silence stretched, heavy with decades of unspoken hatred. Then Giovanni's gaze shifted. Past Matteo, toward me. You think she'll save you from what you are? He asked. You think she'll forgive you when she learns everything you've done? Matteo froze. What's he talking about? I asked quietly. Giovanni smiled faintly. Tell her, Figlio mio. Tell her what really happened the night of your accident. Matteo's jaw clenched. Don't. But Giovanni only chuckled. You see, Clara, your husband wasn't the victim that night. He was the cause. He ordered a hit. A convoy meant to eliminate one of his competitors. The car that crashed. It was his own mistake. His arrogance. My heart stopped. That's not true. Matteo said nothing. Tell me he's lying, I whispered. He looked at me then. And in that silence, I had my answer. I didn't know you'd find me, he said finally. If I had, I stepped back. You let me believe you were the victim? I was, he said, just not the kind you think. I shook my head, tears burning hot. You lied to me. You used me. No, he said, voice breaking. Clara, please. But I was already walking toward the car. Giovanni's laughter followed me across the courtyard like the echo of a curse. Behind me, Matteo's shout shattered the air. Enough. A single gunshot rang out. I turned, heart in my throat. Giovanni staggered, blood blooming across his chest. Matteo stood frozen, gun in hand, horror etched into every line of his face. He dropped the weapon as if it burned. He left me no choice, he whispered. I stared at him, unable to move. There's always a choice. He took a step forward. Clara, no, I said. Don't. My tears blurred the world as I climbed into the car and slammed the door. Vittor started the engine without a word. As we drove away, I looked back one last time. Matteo stood in the rain, his father's body crumpled at his feet, his world collapsing piece by piece. The empire had fallen, not to rivals, not to enemies, but to the man who tried to save it. And somewhere in the wreckage of his choices, my heart broke with it. CATR 12, THE Rasseltio, and 3 weeks passed before I saw him again. The papers called it a tragic succession. Giovanni Moretti found dead at his vineyard. Officially, it was heart failure. Unofficially, no one dared ask questions. The Moretti name carried its own silence. I'd left the next morning. Matteo didn't try to stop me. He'd stood in the doorway as I packed, watching in quiet surrender, blood still drying beneath his fingernails. When I closed the door behind me, I thought it was forever. I rented a small flat in Florence, changed my number, went back to the hospital. The routine, the endless pulse of monitors, the quiet efficiency of saving lives, was the only thing that kept me from unraveling. But at night, I'd wake to the memory of thunder, the sound of his voice in the storm, and the look in his eyes when everything fell apart. Sometimes love doesn't die. It just lies buried under the wreckage. It was a cold afternoon when the past found me again. The sky hung low, the color of steel, and I was leaving the hospital when a car I recognized far too well pulled up across the street. The driver stepped out first, Vittor. He looked thinner, older. When our eyes met, he gave a small nod. He asked for you. I should have turned away. I should have said no. But something inside me, stubborn and unfinished, made me whisper, "Where is he?" Leak. The car wound up into the hills outside Florence, the same road where the vineyards began to fade into forest. We stopped before an old villa overlooking the valley. There were no guards, no noise, just the whisper of wind through olive trees. Vittor opened my door. His waiting in the garden. Matteo stood by the edge of the terrace, facing the horizon. He was thinner, his hair longer, his black suit hanging loose at the shoulders. The sling was gone, but I could tell the pain hadn't left him. When he turned, I saw something I hadn't before. Peace, or the fragile beginnings of it. "Clara," he said softly. "You came." "I shouldn't have," I said, "but I had to see for myself." He nodded, as if he understood. "I've stepped down. The family's under new leadership. I'm out." I blinked. "You walked away." I dismantled what I could. "The rest will devour itself." His gaze drifted toward the valley. Maybe that's what it deserves. He turned back to me. Father's death was my line. I crossed it. There's no returning from that. But maybe I can learn to stop taking what I can't give back. I didn't know what to say. The man before me wasn't the Matteo I'd met in the wreckage. He was quieter, smaller somehow, but alive. He gestured toward a small bench beneath an olive tree. Sit with me. I hesitated, then joined him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was honest. I read about you, he said. You went back to work. St. Mercy's reopened a children's wing. Anonymous donor, I said, a small smile tugging at my lips. I wonder who that was. He smiled faintly. A man trying to do one good thing. We sat there, watching the light fade. I don't know what I expected, I admitted. Maybe to hate you. Maybe to forgive you. I'm not sure which I've done. He looked at me carefully. You don't have to do either. I think I already have, I said quietly, just in pieces. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small. A white card, weathered around the edges. The same one he'd given me that first night. The same number, embossed in black. I kept it, he said. A reminder that miracles sometimes look like mistakes. I took it, my fingers brushing his. And what do you call this? He smiled sadly. A goodbye that doesn't have to hurt. We sat until the sun sank below the horizon, the world awash in gold and shadow. He told me about the vineyards, how he'd reopen them, honestly this time, no blood in the soil. I told him about the hospital, about a patient who'd painted stars on the ceiling to make herself believe in better days. When I finally stood to leave, Matteo rose too. Will I see you again? He asked. I hesitated. Maybe. Someday. When we've both learned how to live without ghosts. He nodded, stepping closer. Close enough that the warmth of him reached me through the cool air. He didn't kiss me, and I didn't let him. Some endings are too fragile for that. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For dragging me out of that car, he said. For showing me what it meant to be saved. I swallowed hard. You saved yourself, Matteo. I just pulled you out. His smile reached his eyes this time, tired but real. Goodbye, Clara Rossi. Goodbye. Matteo Moretti. As I walked down the path toward the car, I didn't look back. The wind carried the faint scent of olives and rain, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel afraid. Behind me, the man who'd once ruled an empire stood alone in the fading light, finally unarmed, finally human. And though our worlds would never intertwine again, a quiet truth settled in my chest. Love, once given, never really dies. It just learns to live differently. The storm was over, and somehow in the ruins both of us had survived.